another major story that broke yesterday with Remington, the gun manufacturing company of the gun that was used in the Sandy Hook massacre, found liable to the tune of $73 million. And this may be very well the largest payout by a gun manufacturer. And this is a historic decision. I want us to really think like this. It's taken this amount of time. This is a major step, but Nomiki, I'm a little afraid of the not even the backlash so much, but the judicial backlash to try to make something like this never happen again. And so I'm a little apprehensive about celebrating, but this is clearly a monumental decision.
It's historic. It's monumental. I think the only caveat is that it is a settlement. So I'm very curious what would have come out if this was a public trial. If during discovery there was information about, for instance, their connection to the NRA, whether or not they fund different efforts. I mean, that kind of stuff, whether it was relevant or not. I mean, it might have been relevant because of the way Sandy Hook was played out in the media. But I think you're right. I think, we have to be very careful. With that being said, it's to use it as a precedent. I mean, who knows? Republicans just goes too far. I mean, they don't even take the. But this is a very tough one to use as a precedent if you're not operating at a sociopathic level.
No, Mickey and Ben, I'll tell you what. When I saw the story break, the first thing that came to my mind is absolutely is historic. It's a precedent, and you gotta believe that. What we know is that the NRA and the gun industry has fought. They have used all of their might to fight against cases like this.
Yeah.
No different. So the parallel to me was what the tobacco industry used to do. The tobacco industry absolutely knew the harmful effects of cigarettes, but they fought with everything they had. I don't care how small the case was, let alone how large it was. And the NRA did the absolute same thing. So I'm trying to say to myself, figure that Remington would pay $73 million to lose a case like this has absolutely opened the gateway, opened the doors.
I hope so.
I believe for us to get sensible legislation, because trust and believe, when you look at it, wasn't just Remington that paid. It was everybody who funds them, the insurance companies, the banks, anybody, Wall Street, anybody that invests in this industry. They now have a wake-up call based on this lawsuit. So even if this lawsuit hadn't have been as large as it was, it's not the size of the lawsuit that they're most afraid of. It's the mere fact that they lost this lawsuit, and culpability and accountability was placed on Remington and all who are part of their supply chain, their financial aspects. That is one of the big aspects of this case, no different than it was with the tobacco industry.
Absolutely. And Dr. Mack, as you mentioned the tobacco industry, it reminds me of what's happening with COVID as it pertains to these corporations, right? The most prevalent sign that I have seen throughout the entirety of the pandemic has been in the state of Georgia, was the one warning people going into every store, into every corporation, that this corporation will not be liable if you die of COVID-19. I don't know if they had those signs in your cities respectively, but every single company, it didn't matter whether it was a grocery store or a dry cleaners or a major corporation, they got immunity during the pandemic from people dying. And it just reminds me of how much leverage corporations have with our lives in this country. And it's just time after time, we've seen corporations get away with the damage they do to real life. They take lives with these products. They get away with it. And I'm with you, Dr. Mack. I hope this continues to open the floodgates of accountability.
Well, Ben, one of the things that one of the family members said that was just so, it was so strategic. I don't want to use the term strategic, and Nomiki, I think we're all having the same situation of talking about this on the heels of this type of precedent being set at such a tremendous loss. So I certainly don't want to sound insensitive. And I'm sure that to these parents, 73 million, they would gladly give that back to have their children back, to have their loved ones back. So I get it. But one of the things that they said that they were pleased with was to be able to also bring out all of the internal documentation that speaks to when these gun manufacturers make the kind of weapons they make, what is the marketing and strategic plan of who it is that they're targeting, that they want to buy these types of weapons? So, being to that point, when folks make a raid on things and you don't have sensible legislation, in effect, this lawsuit says that if you allow one of our weapons to get inside that, or in the hands of someone who is deranged, and you haven't done that, we could be held culpable for that. Trust and believe.
Yes,
they're gonna want to be behind that, because I certainly, if I made a product and I knew it would to be as dangerous as it is, and no matter who gets it, somehow it could come back to me and not just stay within that individual, you're gonna be on the front line of trying to bring about some change. At least that's what logic says to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.